we are now live here as well, going to God knows where it goes to,
Yeah,
Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, wherever. Hello, Sarah. How are you?
I'm all right. Thanks, Fiona. Yeah, it's lovely to see you.
It is. I'm sorry we're a little bit late starting, but there we go. As long as we're here, that's all that matters.
Yeah,
Now, you are a former nurse,
yes,
and you have now become an ADHD coach.
yes.
Tell me why. What was your journey?
So, about 2 years ago, nearly 2 years ago, I got my formal ADHD diagnosis. And I had quite, that always opens quite a can of worms. So that led to quite a lot of information to process for me around ADHD and how that had affected me kind of all my life. And also the really fun part was that the perimenopause hit at the same time. And I think it'd been rumbling for quite a long time. And then it really upped its game. And I just started really, really struggling with daily life. I was also supporting my two wonderful children who are both neurodivergent. So there were lots of aspects of their lives that myself and my husband were supporting, and like elderly relatives and, running a home, working, etc. And, my mental health really took quite a big hit from it. So frameworks and systems which I'd really relied on all my life to manage my ADHD, even though I didn't know that's what it was, they really just sort of stopped working, or were barely working. So I was really, really struggling. And I spoke to a friend one day, and I just said, I've been thinking for a while, like I just didn't feel like I could go to work, and I was really struggling at work with just sort of keeping on top of my kind of mental health, and really feeling like imposter syndrome, really feeling I wasn't good enough. And a friend just said to me, she just said, come off the phone, and the first thing you do is you phone your GP and you say, I can't work, which is what I did. And that really
Which must
started.
have been a very, very big decision to actually think,
Oh,
what I've got to do. I mean, that's huge.
yeah. And that's what I think I'd been, I think we always try and pretend that we're coping and want to show the world that we're doing okay and we're managing. And I really wasn't managing at all, but I was so scared, I suppose, of what the future was. But I was thinking, I can't do this anymore. So I got signed off work for 3 months, and within that time frame, the first thing I did was got my HRT sorted for my perimenopause. And also the other thing I did was I got an ADHD coach. Now, I mean, the word coaching makes me cringe. And I just think, when it's that kind of cliche of, I'm a coach or a life coach. But this whole thing, I can't even remember how it happened, but I got an ADHD coach, and she was incredible. And it was the first time in my life that I really found somebody that really understood ADHD. They understood how my ADHD had shown up for me all my life, and they just got it. I've had times before where I've said to people, about kind of emotional dysregulation and things like that, which you get a lot with ADHD. And I've tried to explain that, and people just sort of say, oh, well, no one likes being rejected. Well, this is, and you get it in really extreme forms in ADHD. And they just understood these things. They got it. They didn't go, what's that? They'd walked in my shoes, and they supported me and helped me find goals and, ways to really work with my ADHD and find ways to really like myself and find ways that worked with my ADHD and not against it. Whereas before I tried, you're trying so hard to be normal, whatever that is. But it doesn't work when you've got ADHD. It just doesn't. You have to find other ways to work with it, to how you look at yourself, to how you are, how you show up in your life. And I found it so transformational that this person who was just championing me and working with me and helping me find these tools. And I thought, you know what? I would love to do this. And I had so many transferable skills from being a senior nurse for so long. And I thought, this is what I would love to do. I'd love to support other women, other people who have got ADHD, who are struggling, and also to because my children are neurodivergent as well, and I wanted, it just broke my heart that these kids are going through education being told they're wrong, that they're not doing things right, and actually, if it is undiagnosed ADHD, it's helping parents or, finding these tools. So these kids are growing up going, actually, I am okay, and I do things a bit differently, but that's okay, rather than I'm rubbish, I'm lazy, I can't do things. Whereas actually you can do them, but it's just how your ADHD shows up that can cause these issues.
So it's interesting because you basically, so you didn't know that you had ADHD, but you've got the kids who do. So when you were looking at your kids, were you looking at it thinking, actually, that sounds just like I was? Or what was your early life like to leading up to this? And what did you do to get those coping strategies that then all fell apart at menopause?
So when I was growing up, I always knew I'd always been an overthinker. I really overthink, and I've got inattentive ADHD, which is where it's internalized, where you ruminate, you overthink. It's like you've got like 100 computer tabs open in your head all at the same time, and you're always thinking about so many things at the same time, which is exhausting. So I always knew I was an overthinker. I've been told when I was younger, I am oversensitive. Again, this is a part of ADHD, is poor emotional regulation. There's a part of ADHD which is called rejection sensitive dysphoria, where the real or perceived rejection, you feel it. It's just like this tsunami of pain within you, and you just can't cope with it sometimes. And, that's really, really hard to deal with at times. And again, my coach helped me find ways to manage my RSD. Very poor concentration. I looked at some of my old school reports earlier. Well, it was actually last year now. And all of them were just, I was always talking. All of them said I had poor concentration, that I didn't stop talking, didn't pay attention. And that was me. I was always the one that didn't do the work, and, was that a bit of a pain child, I guess. But again, all these negative things that you can't do, and you're doing that wrong, and you're not fitting in. So there was sort of that, really. And yeah.
Familiar, I must say.
Okay.
Yes, very, very, very tricky. So what sort of coping mechanisms did you put in place then to get you to perimenopause that because you've done well. You were a senior respiratory nurse, and you have achieved.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of it was just this sort of self-realization as well, that because I knew, again, other big parts of ADHD, I knew I interrupted people a lot. So I'm sorry if I do that. I've struggled with connecting and making friends with people. I have got some wonderful friends now, really, really great connections I've got with people, but I'd always really struggled, not really understood relationships and friendships, and just this kind of it's I suppose some of the frameworks that I found were, I knew that sleep was really important, because if I didn't have enough sleep, I would really, really struggle. And again, with inattentive ADHD, it's exhausting. And I'd been to the doctor in my 30s. I didn't know what was wrong with me. I didn't know if I had cancer or what was going on, because I was permanently exhausted, so tired all the time. All my bloods came back normal. And I just didn't know, even when I had a good night's sleep, I was still really, really tired. So sleep was a bit of a kind of obsession. I think it is for most nurses anyway, especially when doing shift work, you're so obsessed with getting enough sleep. But I knew that I really struggled to function without the right amount of sleep. So kind of putting boundaries around my sleep was really important for me. And things like I was just trying really hard a lot of the time not to interrupt. The whole time I was talking to people thinking, don't interrupt them. You suddenly like, oh, I can do this. You want to talk with them. And then I'd be like, why did you say this? Why did and then just ruminating for days, and again causing exhaustion, because the whole time you're just thinking, why did I say this? So really, really trying hard not to do that. I don't really drink alcohol, because I found that then if I'm drunk, then I start oversharing, and you say too much, and then again then rumination afterwards. So that wasn't great. And I guess a lot of it, I used to just make loads and loads of lists. And
if it makes you feel any better, I spend most of my life talking about my vagina, and apparently so if we're talking about oversharing, you're talking to the wrong person. You're fine here.
Well, as long as it's in context, that's fine. Are these strangers? Are these people that you're saying this to? Anyway, I love it. I haven't got there yet, but there's time.
It's just a progression.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'll aim. Yes, that's what I'll be aiming for. Yeah.
So basically, yes, you have to prioritize sleep. You have to really, concentrate on not interrupting people and then not beating yourself up for it. So these are quite sort of difficult things to get to do. So then when you hit perimenopause and all of those hormones suddenly hit in, and it seems to be it's quite hard to find statistics on this, but there does seem to be a lot of people who are suddenly finding that they're getting diagnosed with ADHD, or the ADHD that they already knew that they had does manifest itself massively. So how then do you differentiate between what is just a menopause symptom, because we all know some of us can go slightly when it comes to menopause, and sleep throws up problems, or the lack of it, and the fluctuating hormones just making us moodier and more just difficult concentrating and all of those sorts of things. So how do you tell the difference between what's the ADHD and what's perimenopause?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question. So really, you're looking at how you were growing up, how you were as a child. So you're, again, it's memories from when you were a child, but also what your family would say that you were like, or you're really just reflecting on what you were like at school, what your school reports were like, that sort of thing. And if people are saying, oh, this suddenly happened when I became perimenopausal, but if during your life actually you hadn't struggled with a lot of these symptoms previously, if they are new, then it's quite likely that then therefore that's perimenopause and not ADHD. And I think it's very, very important to differentiate between the two, because the symptoms are so similar. With the poor sleep and emotional dysregulation, etc. Yeah, very, very much so.
Yeah. So when you did you start? I forgot to actually ask you. Did you start HRT? Did you go on HRT? Did it make any difference? Yeah.
No, HRT really was my priority to start, because because it protects your body, and your mind, and you can't really start dealing with your ADHD until you've got the foundations of your mind and your body set to sort of where they are naturally. So because I did also for years I'd had symptoms with aching joints and thought I had arthritis and and things like that. And of course you're worried about osteoporosis and all the long-term issues when you don't take HRT. For me personally, that was really, really important to get those baselines in first, and then I could start looking at my ADHD. But because your dopamine is estrogen is helps you that with the production of dopamine in your brain. So when your estrogen goes down, your dopamine goes down even further. So therefore, if that's still really low, you can't start dealing with your ADHD symptoms until your estrogen is to the natural baseline that it is for you. I mean, that's what I feel anyway, that you have to get those really important things ready, done first, so that then you're kind of as fit and able as you can be to then deal with the ADHD.
Yeah. So you went off, you did the coaching course. So now when people come to you and they're in this kind of state, what do you take them through and how and what can they do that helps them?
Well, ADHD coaching is really about the client. It's about what they are struggling with. So it's whether they are struggling with it's things that are showing up for them in their daily life. So they bring to the session what they need for that day. So whether that is relationships, or how they're coping in their job, and whether the job is right for them, or I mean, it can be anything. People have come to me where they're struggling with daily routines, like brushing their teeth and remembering to do things, or finding ways to explain to other people how their ADHD shows up. Sometimes people can have people around them, close family members or friends, who maybe are invalidating how they are, and they can go to them, but they're struggling to explain to people how this shows up for them. So I've worked with people around that before, and devising ways to write things down to say, this is how it shows up for me. So they, but it can be anything. Some people are struggling because when you've got ADHD, you've got this interest-based nervous system. We love the sparkly, interesting, nice things, the fun things. And it's boring stuff that we put aside and we pretend it isn't happening. We don't, paying bills or putting the rubbish out is boring. So we're like, I'll do that some other time. And we don't do it. And then we feel rubbish about ourselves and tell ourselves we're lazy and, blah, blah, blah. But, it's finding these set routines for people so that they can manage these boring tasks, or can re-sparkleize them to make them a bit more interesting, so you can get these daily chores done. But it's finding the right tools for your toolkit for each person, because all of us are different. Our ADHD shows up differently for all of us. So for some people, managing emotional dysregulation is really, really important, because that can show up in really dangerous ways sometimes for people, because we can be very impulsive. We can say things really quickly that we might regret later. So, if you come to somebody and say, I talk about my vagina all the time and I don't want to. So it's like, right, okay, that's just an example, I don't get many people asking me that, by the way. But, yeah, it's always a first. But, it's just how your ADHD is showing up for you, and ways that you'd want it to look differently, and to say, I want to be able to pay my bills on time, or I want to be able to have to be able to cook meals for my children without feeling so overwhelmed or washed out. It could be so many things. How you feel with friendships, how things manifest, and if people are feeling they're not good enough. So but it's so specific all the time, but it can change.
Yeah, it's a very, I mean, what you're describing there is a very broad range of things to actually sort of pinpoint and deal with. And I understand the boredom thing, because I think that sort of really just, while you were saying that, I was thinking to myself, perfect career to be a journalist, because every day or every couple of weeks, or depending on whether you're doing long or short format stuff, you've got something new and sparkly to deal with. And it does kind of it sort of keep going, especially if you are one of those people who finds 99.9% of life extremely dull. So, but for things that are that daily routine, that's hard. If you can't even get yourself through those kinds of things, that's
And it's all about looking at people's strengths, where they're strong. We have a natural negative bias towards ourselves. We've told ourselves all our lives that we're not good enough, that we're lazy, that we're stupid. Because we learn, some of us might learn differently. I know I really struggle. My working memory has always been so bad, and I understand things, but ask me later on what it was about, I won't remember. I read books and I'll say to somebody, that was a really good book. Oh, what was it about? I don't know. I can't remember. I know I could tell you, there was a woman in it. But there's things like that if that's important to somebody, to say, I want to be able to remember a book I've read, or remember what it was about, then it's finding ways that you can remember it, and finding tools to do that. So it's just those little things in life. They're not big things. It's just everyday things that's showing up for you, where you're that you want to change so that they work better for you.
Yeah. Are there, the other thing out of this, are there, apart from sleep, does exercise make a difference? Are there other lifestyle things? For you, not drinking. Sorry, I have a cold, so excuse me while I cough for a second. I blame my husband. Are there other sort of lifestyle things that people can put in place as well? that would make it just easier just to give some sort of, mental and physical routine at least.
Yeah. Excuse me, sorry, I can't, if you hear my cat meowing. So I think exercise really, really does help. And I, just to get out, get in the fresh air. It doesn't have to be for a long time, but I think it makes a massive difference to people's mental health, just to get out and get a bit more clarity and just to be able to process what's in your head a little bit. And I think that, those endorphins as well, when you're exercising, even if it's, I'd say, just walking or doing something, a really short exercise, it doesn't have to be something really big. If you're thinking I have to join a gym and I have to do all this other stuff, then I think that's what can, then we feel overwhelmed and then we don't do it. And then you're like, oh, I didn't exercise and I'm really rubbish. So sometimes it's putting in these small little things that can help. And then you're like, I achieved that. That's great. And being kind to yourself and saying, even if I do a small bit of exercise, that's okay. It doesn't have to be something really big. We compare ourselves to others all the time and saying, they're doing that. And because they've done that and I can't do it, I'm rubbish. And then you don't do it. Then you sit on the sofa and then you go, I'm crap and I'm lazy and blah, blah, blah. But actually, these are wins. All of these things are wins. And going back to what I was saying about this natural negative bias we have against ourselves, and we've told ourselves these things. So it's a lot of the ADHD coaching, it's turning things around and looking at remembering positive things and rewiring your brain. There are studies which show that people that can reflect and remember positive memories, they've got better outcomes with their mental health. I haven't got links to these studies, but I know I heard it on it was on Radio 4. It was on All in the Mind recently. They were talking about this. So, it's just looking at things like that. And again, for me, not drinking alcohol really helped me because alcohol affects my sleep and my mental health. And then I'm ruminating, and all the other knock-on effects. So for me, it was a no-brainer just to not drink. And trying to eat better, that's something I'm still kind of working on. But it's tricky with looking after kids who are neurodivergent, because one of my children only eats very specific foods. So then it's very hard then meal planning and, certain foods you can make all these different meals every day. And I know some people do, but I just can't do that. And I find cooking extremely dull. So that's quite a chore for me, that, and following recipes, I can't follow recipes. So it's finding these meals. And again, this is something I've worked with my ADHD coach. So my husband cooks a lot of the meals, or he'll plan them, and we work together, and that's how it works for us. And again, looking at timeframes, because often then if I'm in a hyper focus or I'm thinking other stuff, then I forget to cook meals, and then it's quite late at night, and so it's making sure I've got structures in place to make that I am getting these things done, because it's for everybody else as well. And as a mum, you are supporting so many other people in your life that it's important to do that.
I'm smiling away to myself here because I'm thinking I absolutely have to be this. I'm thinking about the recipes, and my mother used to make a choc almond meringue, and so I always just thought it was her original pavlova recipe, which I'd sort of memorized vaguely and never went back to look at. So I was making it the same way, and then I actually opened up her old recipe, or not, what I'd written down from her old recipe book years ago, and what I was making was completely different. It was absolutely the opposite, and I kind of thought, why do I never look at the recipes? Why do I never look at them? I mean, what I was making was absolutely quite fine, but it was not what she was making originally.
Yes.
Yes, there you go. Your structure's in place. When it comes to diet, people often talk about things like the importance of omega-3 in the diet as well, and a broad range of EPA, sort of omega, the fat oils. Do you think that's important in ADHD? They say, especially for kids.
Yeah, well, I'm not an expert in things like that, so I don't know if I could advise that. But definitely, I do think these essential oils are great, and if your kids can't eat them, then definitely, one of my children has supplements, and we have vitamin D supplements in the winter. But I'd say that it's these oils, isn't it, that are really, really important for us to be having. So while the rest of us are having fish and mackerel and things like that, it's just finding alternatives that are not the same as the real thing, but hopefully as, you know, better than nothing.
Yeah, but apparently some of them are quite good. I know you've already answered this, but somebody has come in on the Instagram and they're asking the same question: does HRT help with ADHD?
Hugely, yes, because it helped. As I was saying, it helped with my joint pain. It helped because then it was topping up my estrogen. So the estrogen is helping to produce that's what helps produce your dopamine, which is your, you know, this neurotransmitter for producing dopamine, which is what we're lacking in anyway with ADHD. So your estrogen goes down, your dopamine goes down even more, which is then why your executive functions, your, you know, procrastination, motivation, emotional, you know, ways to control your emotions. I think I just said that already. But all of these things which you would struggle with just get so much worse because your dopamine's gone down even further. So for me, getting my HRT sorted was the biggest priority, because although my dopamine is lower because I've got ADHD, I wanted it to be kind of the highest it could be, if you know what I mean, before I then, you know, tried because I'm on ADHD medication as well. But
which was my next question. Do they go together? Are there other medications? I mean, can you do this without medication? If you do need medication, what types of medications are there? And there's a LinkedIn person here saying, yes, omega-3s are good. And she's also found ashwagandha, which I think people use for anxiety. And that was my other question I was going to ask you as well, which I completely forgot about, because other symptoms that come with this with ADHD. Does it, you know, increase your anxiety? Does it, you know, well, how does it manifest in that way?
Yeah. What was the first question? Thank you, whoever wrote about omega-3. That's really interesting. I really appreciate that. I couldn't remember what the next question was. You were saying about...
I'll go back the other way and I'll do it. Other symptoms that come with it, anxiety and things like that. Does ADHD up that anxiety when you hit?
Hugely. When mine got really much worse, I pretty much stopped socializing with people for about a year and a half. I've got close friends that I would maybe see every few months. I was really sociable when I was younger. I loved seeing people. I loved going out, and I just got to hate it. I didn't even like leaving the house. I would avoid going out the house as much as I could. So even with dropping my children at school or doing things like that, if I could, I'd get my husband to do it, because I just couldn't face seeing people, talking to people. I felt overwhelmed and my sleep got worse. I felt just so overwhelmed, and my rejection sensitive dysphoria, you know, just got very bad, where the whole time I was just thinking that, you know, just telling myself how rubbish I was. And I'm just trying to think other symptoms, really. I was just so tired all the time. And, you know, you just... you just lose confidence completely, and then I didn't feel motivated to do anything either. So I would have quite happily, you know, I've always been somebody, I love exercising. I've swum all my life, and I used to run a lot, and then I just didn't want to do anything.
Nope, I think I've lost you. Are you still there? Have we lost connection?
Social anxiety got very bad. Ooh.
Yeah. So social, you froze there for a second. So social anxiety, loss of confidence, incredible tiredness, and just anxiety through the roof, which is not a lot of fun. Then that'd be to the other question: was other medications that do you have to have them? Can you get through without them? What are they? How do they work?
Yeah. There are lots of different ADHD medications. I'm not, you know, it's really down to each individual. You don't have to, but for me personally, I wanted to try them just to see how much it would help me. And I found that they do, but there's a saying which is pills don't give you skills. So they can help to a point if that's what you want to take. So mine are quite a low dose, and they help with your focus. They help with my focus just for a few hours every day. And then I know that if I've got windows of things that I need to do with work or things I need to do, I know that then, you know, I've got that motivation and it helps me focus and get those things done. And it just means you're a bit, you know, you're more efficient. So of course, there's different doses and different medications for HRT, for ADHD, but they have to be, monitored properly by a psychiatrist and or somebody who's trained in these medications. So usually they're done after you've had your diagnosis, then you get asked if you want to try the medications or not. So for me, I wanted to try them because I didn't want to be looking back on my life and thinking maybe that would have helped me. So I thought I'll try them, and because they've got quite a short half-life, it means that then they're only in the system for a few hours. So it's not, you take them and they help you that day, and then you don't have to take them next day if you don't want to. But for me, I take mine every single day. And there was well, it wasn't just national, it was a worldwide ADHD medication shortage, which I think is starting to tail off now. But that was about a year ago. That was really, really bad. It was very hard to get hold of medication. So at the time, my medication I could get hold of was in a much lower dose. So I just took that because I kind of had what I could, but I actually found a lower dose was better for me by accident because of the national shortage. So I just stay on that now, and I'm quite happy with that. Otherwise, I could get quite jittery. And again, this is why they need to be titrated and monitored initially by a trained physician, because they're a stimulant. They do affect your blood pressure, etc. So they do have to be monitored really carefully, and they've got to be done safely. But for me, it was just part of the picture. So getting the coaching. So it's like someone's likened it to. So when you get it's like your life has been this really messy room, and you've just got this mess around you all the time. So you get your diagnosis, and it's like you're given a pair of glasses, and you're given the diagnosis, and then you're like, oh, this is why my room's really messy. So your room's really messy then, and then when you get your medication, and then suddenly it's like a pair of glasses, and you can then see all this stuff there. But then you get the ADHD coaching to help you sort the mess out and go, right, how do I do this? How do I do that works for me, that I can tidy this mess up or as much as I can, and find ways that I can consistently keep tidying it up throughout my life, which work for me. Because what works for me might not work for you. But it's just finding the things that need to help me be motivated to get what I need to get done, if that makes sense.
Yeah. How much of a relief is it when you get the diagnosis? Does things sort of like fall into place when you suddenly go, oh, if only I'd known? Is it a relief?
I would say it is a relief. It's quite sad, actually. It's quite stressful waiting to be assessed, because the whole time,
isn't it?
It's a long. Well, when I was lucky. I only had to wait 18 months, and that was, as I say, that was I actually had my assessment 2 years ago, so it was 18 months prior to that. But I would say it was quite emotional, because suddenly you think, this validates how I've been feeling all my life, and I'm not. I mean, for a while in my life, because I didn't know what was going on, I thought I was bipolar. I've been diagnosed with anxiety and depression, which are coexisting conditions with ADHD. And you just don't know what's going on. And, a lot of people, there's a huge debate always about whether people like labels or not. But for me, I got the label of ADHD, and I was like, now I can work with this and find how to deal with it. So I love labels, because then you can find what you need. So there's a lot of grief around it. There's a huge amount of mental processing. This is, again, for me, and I think it is quite common, is suddenly processing this, and day in, day out, and again, because my brain never stops working, I'm joining the dots continually, day after day after day after day, of like, this is why this happened. And I'm, constantly these memories from when I was younger, things that had happened, people I've spoken to, and you're just thinking, that's why I said this. This is why I did this. Oh, if only I hadn't said this. So, blah, 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 blah. And the whole time you're kind of beating yourself up a bit and thinking, oh, I've wasted all this time. And if I'd only known, again, which is why I'm really passionate to support my children and to try and help other parents to support their kids and to know themselves and to not go throughout your whole life trying to, be something you're not. People liken it to, it's like you're a zebra, but you're trying your whole life to be a horse, and you're trying to be something you're not. And now it's like, celebrate being a zebra. I'm a zebra, so it's fine. And, that's great, rather than the whole time not being what you can't be and then telling yourself you're rubbish for it, if that makes sense. But certainly, I mean, I had a very serious eating disorder for 15 years. From when I was a teenager. I now know that's linked with ADHD. There are lots of studies which are showing links with obesity and eating disorders and ADHD, because we haven't got that dopamine. We need the dopamine. So then we're overeating, we're snacking, and again, that's our hyperfocus. We're obsessing with food, or addictions. A huge amount of addictive behaviors are now being linked with ADHD. I think at least half of the prison population are thought to have ADHD, and there's a huge screening program which is on at the moment, run by an amazing lady called Sarah Templeton, who's really working incredibly hard to try and help people in the prison system, because again, we're impulsive. We're all these attributes with ADHD that we've got, the impulsivity, the need for dopamine, I think that's down to a lot of why people can have these risky behaviors, and that can get people into trouble. But there's lots and lots of links. That again, that's what I was processing for so long, and I was thinking, oh my goodness, this is why this has happened, and this is why I did this, and this is why I wouldn't listen to my mum, and this is why I was quite wild when I was younger, and I just wanted to go out and party all the time, and it's.
It's a lot to do with. There's a question over here as well. So how do you feel when undiagnosed people refer to having ADHD pre-diagnosis?
Sorry, can you say that again?
How do you feel when undiagnosed people refer to themselves as having ADHD before they've been diagnosed?
I think you know it yourself. I think a lot of the time. I mean, maybe not. I mean, sometimes people will come, I imagine, and say, I think this is what it is. But I think everyone, it's somebody's individual journey, isn't it? And if somebody's saying I've got ADHD, undiagnosed ADHD, it's not up to me to say you haven't or you have. If that's what they believe and that's what they're feeling, I think that's valid. And that's sort of their journey, isn't it? And if they're then on the waiting list to be assessed for ADHD, then that's great. Good for them. And I really hope that they find out one way or the other whether they do. But I don't know. I'm far more.
Question: Are there sort of like with Asperger's and things like that? Are there scales of? I mean, obviously not every. You have very well. You haven't ended up in prison. So is there a sort of yet? There's a sliding scale of sort of how much people lack in impulse control, or how much people can't concentrate, or how much are there? Does it must differentiate? It must. What's the word I'm looking for? I've forgotten the word, but it must present differently.
So I'm just going to let my cat just out there.
Oh my goodness.
There we go. Well, everybody's different. Everyone, again, it shows up differently in each individual person. It's going to show up differently. And I mean, I'm always late for things, always. And my time management can be quite bad, and yet, and I know some people with ADHD where it presents in a different way, where they're always early, like really early for things, because they get so anxious about being late. So it's down to each individual and how it shows up for them. So someone's ADHD can show up, in that they're not motivated to get things done. And for me, things turn into if I'm interested, they turn into a real hyper focus for me, and then I do get stuff done. But it just shows. I'm trying to think of other examples.
Do you think there's an overlap as well with OCD?
100%. I know you said Asperger's, but actually it's all termed as autism these days. But there's so many coexisting conditions which go alongside ADHD, and it's thought that if you have been diagnosed with ADHD, you're very likely to have at least 2 or 3 other coexisting conditions like autism, OCD, addictive behaviour, let me think what other ones. I'm going to think of them all when we've come off the call. PMDD for women. I think there's a huge amount of hormonal things which are coexisting conditions with ADHD as well. Trying to think what other things. Yeah, I'll probably think of them later on, but
yeah, because it's a whole bucket load of stuff there, isn't there, to go through?
Yeah.
So, are you only seeing people then who have been diagnosed, or are you? Yeah.
No. I'll if people are awaiting assessment or they suspect they have ADHD, then I'm really, really happy to have a call with them, and then we can talk through where their struggles are. And actually, even if people haven't got ADHD as well, sometimes I work with family members, husbands or wives of people with ADHD who are saying, how can I support my partner, or how can I support my child to help them? So parents I work with sometimes as well, just because it's the person coming to you that's saying I need help with this, of where they've got these struggles.
Yeah. In terms of with people then who are thinking that they have got, or they do have been diagnosed with it, what would be your takeaway message for them, just so that they know that they're not going completely barking mad and that there is a light at the end of their tunnel?
Yeah, just that they are good enough, and there is help and support out there, which is really, really effective. I just found ADHD coaching so transformational for me, whereas other treatments hadn't ever worked, and now I know why. But I would just say that there is support out there, and people are talking about it more. And I think, therefore, then there's better education and knowledge. Of course, you've got to be talking, there's so much rubbish out there as well on social media, than people, saying incorrect things. But it's just making sure you're talking to people that are trained professionals, and people that have got that background where they've got that information. But just that, you are good enough, and there's nothing wrong with you. It's just your brain's wired differently to other people's, but it doesn't mean you're any less than anybody else.
Yeah. Is there, this is another stupid question, but just in terms of, is there, when you say you're thinking you're constantly not good enough all the time, is there also then a need for validation all the time, for people to be telling you that you are good? That might make people think that perhaps you're sort of, slightly, I don't know, you're always needing me to tell you how good you are.
Yeah.
Is there any part of that or not?
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I suppose that's going to show up and present for some people, but I think for me it was really internalized. It was just this internal monologue all the time, but I just didn't really, sometimes you share it with people, but I wouldn't be saying it outwardly to people a lot. But it was just that it was an inward monologue for me more than anything, and then just trying, and finding ways to try and turn that around, and finding ways to go, actually, I am all right. And it doesn't matter if I haven't just washed the dishes straight away, or I haven't done this, because I will get it done, and that's okay. Whereas previously I would have gone, oh, you're so rubbish, you didn't go and do that, and you hadn't got it right. And so many of us are perfectionists, we're people pleasers. And then when we're not, getting things what we think are right, we're very hard on ourselves. But it's just learning to be gentle with yourself, and just say, actually, I'm okay. And good enough is good enough. Perfection does not exist.
No, that's very, very true. It is hard to take that on, though, sometimes, especially if you are a people pleaser. And that's learning how to say no. Is it hard for people to learn to say no?
It's up to them. If they want to learn how to say no, you can find a way. And that's the thing, again, with the ADHD coaching, you have to be motivated to want to change. I'm not going to wave a magic wand and do it for you. You have to put in the work. If you're saying, I want to change this, you've got to do it as well. But certainly, that's the thing, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. The very lovely Lisa Watson is asking you a question.
Lisa!
Lisa, who is a menopause nurse. Do you offer advice on how? Oh, no, I can't even read today. There you go. Do you offer advice how an adult can get a diagnosis and referral to a specialist via the GP? Yeah. What do they need to say to actually get sent on?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Lisa. So if you want to get an assessment for ADHD, there's three things that you can do. You can either go down the NHS route, which is where everybody knows that the lists are years and years and years long. I'm still waiting for my NHS. I got my diagnosis was through shared care, where you go to your GP and you say to them, I'd like to go down it's the right to choose route. It's called shared care or right to choose. So you go and you say, I'd like to go with right to choose. So they ask you if your GP or your mental health nurse at your surgery says what your symptoms. They can do like a checklist, and if you score, higher or lower than a certain number, then there's an indication that it's likely you've got ADHD. Then you choose a private provider who you want to be assessed by, and then the GP sends that information to the private provider, and you're on their waiting list, and then they contact you after a certain period of time to then assess you for ADHD.
You have to pay for that then?
No, so it's right to choose, and that's with your GP, and it's free. Now, the theory with right to choose or shared care is that then when you have been diagnosed and you've had your medications, if you want the medication, you get them titrated. If you don't, then you just get referred back to your GP. But the theory is then you're titrated on the medication, you're on the right medication, it's safe for you, that's working, and then you get referred back to the GP, and then the NHS takes your care back on. Now, that's the theory, but this is now being stopped by a huge amount of GPs in the UK because there's a big hoo-ha from the powers that be within, sort of government and NHS England and whatnot, where the GPs aren't getting paid extra money to take on board this care back again. So the GPs are saying, we're not doing this. So I know there's a lot of information at the moment going around, and there was a Radio 4 programme last week on You and Yours about this, where people are going with right to choose, and then we go back, and this is what happened to me, where we go back to the GP and then say, and the GP says, no, thanks. And then you get bounced back again. So on, which was a really good theory. So what they're saying is, certainly in Devon, where I am, what they're saying is once you've been assessed by the NHS, then we'll take you back. But mine was sent off at the same time as my right to choose. My NHS one was sent off at the same time, and I'm still waiting. So that was nearly 4 years ago. So I'm still waiting on my NHS one. There.
You set up a system and then not remunerate the person who has to pick up the pieces on the other end.
Yeah.
That just makes bonkers. That makes no sense.
Yeah, I know. And there's people out there who really need their medication to function, and they're not being allowed, they can't get hold of it.
You can't blame the GP for that in the end, because really in the end, they've got to feed their family as well.
Yeah. And also, the GPs aren't trained. They're general practitioners. They're not trained. They've got very limited training on ADHD. So if they feel it's not going to be safe, and they're not getting paid to do this, they won't do it. So there's that. You can pay privately, which of course that costs an arm and a leg. And again, you're paying for private prescriptions every month, which are normally £150 to £200 a month. Or as I say, or the NHS where you're waiting. So it's those three systems that you've got, but none of them are great for various reasons. And and I found on top of that, then I was also fighting for some of my HRT as well, because GPs aren't prescribing testosterone as well, or they're rejecting it, or so it's really, really hard for women, because all we're trying to do is fight to get to a place where we can function, where the menopause is holding us back, the ADHD is holding us back, and it just makes me so angry that we're being let down by this. And also because of ADHD, then we're struggling with motivation. You're getting overwhelmed. I'm thinking to myself, I've got to phone the GP and wait for ages. And again, this is just the way it is. But you phone up and you're 16th in the queue, and then you phone up and say, "Can I speak to somebody about the menopause?" And they go, "Oh, well, we've got no appointments at the moment because they're all used up. So phone back again tomorrow at whatever time." And you phone back again, and you're back in the top of the queue, in the end of the queue. So it puts you off, and then you just don't do anything, and you just think, right, well. So that's what makes me so cross, because we're fighting all the time. Then we're fighting for our kids who are waiting on assessments or waiting on support from CAMS, or and then we're supporting elderly relatives, and we're trying to work, and we're trying to run a home, and but the basic.
Storm,
pardon?
Becomes a perfect storm.
Absolutely, but things like just to be able to function, so your brain chemistry's normalized to a point, getting that right, those right foundations, even to fight for those, so that then we can function every day to then do all the other things, all these other plates that we're spinning, and that's just what makes me really, really cross.
Yeah. And also then, it brings home how important it is to have the tools that you can provide to people. So at least while they're waiting, or once they're on the path that they want to be on, that they've got that toolkit in there that they can sort of function with. So where do people find you, should they wish to find you?
So I'm on LinkedIn, Sarah West, and my website is www.sarahwest, that's all one word, -adhd.com. I've got free downloadable resources on my website, which are on hormone trackers and ADHD trackers, just to see which boxes you are ticking if you are thinking that maybe you have got ADHD, so that then you've got that information you could take to your GP if you wanted to validate how you're feeling, these symptoms. So you can go and say, I've been through these and I tick these boxes, and this was like this beforehand. So you've got that there as a piece of paper, a template. And also there's another download which is just talking about how your hormones affect your ADHD, and again, whether it is ADHD or just perimenopause, just so that people are really clear on what's causing what, and so that helps to validate things as well.
Yeah. Tricky time, a very, very tricky time. That if it weren't bad enough as it is, then to suddenly have something that you've probably been really struggling with all your life, then to have that blow up a million times worse in your face, it's sort of like, it's not really what you need.
No, and it'd be good, from talking to you, there's very, very little research out there on hormones, ADHD,
yes,
perimenopause, and this is something which I'm, and as a nurse, I'm really, really keen to be looking into this in the future as well. Again, to have
ideally, what sort of research would you want to see done? Says she, running a menopause research and education fund, which does not have enough money. So if you are watching, subscribe, donate. I'm going to end up being like Stephen Bartlett, and I'll be, what people should be saying all the time. What research would you like to see done?
Just more proving these links with hormones, proving the links with ADHD, and how hormones affect ADHD, and how this could be affecting women and girls all their lives. As I said earlier, like things like PMDD, and these are the theories that I feel are things like postnatal depression, or the extreme things that, well, any parts really. I mean, just these links with hormones and neurodivergence, and how it's showing up for women when their hormones are fluctuating, and how it affects us in our daily lives. Sorry, I'm waffling now.
Yeah, it needs to be done. So much needs to be done.
Yeah, definitely.
Brilliant. All right, my darling, I will let you go and enjoy the rest of your day. And thank you so much for that, because it is an area that needs more research, needs more facilities thrown at it, obviously, and just more talking about. So I will talk to you, I'm sure, again at another stage. And thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for inviting me, Fiona. It's been great.
No problems. And I'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.